It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. This is show number 285. It is December 2018. I am so delighted that you have joined us today to listen to this show. I appreciate it very much. Later on, we're going to have an interview with Sally Hunt. She got thrown out of a city council meeting because she dared to disagree with, I guess, the president, probably the mayor, the board president, something like that, and ended up suing them. And there's an update to the case, but I don't want to ruin the whole thing for you. We'll have that in the interview. Also, a little later on, a brand new segment. I'm not sure what to call it yet. We're going to talk about a specific church and where it spends its money. We actually got a budget from a church, so that's good fun. And I have a little rant, about bankruptcy, how bankruptcy works a little bit, but mostly a rant about insurance and the scummy, slimy, awful people that sell insurance to elderly people, senior citizens, and some thoughts on that. And before we get into all that fun stuff, just a little side thing for me is regular listeners know that I have been practicing and am still practicing to learn Italian. I would not call myself fluent, but probably conversational, and it's one of those things that when you get far enough into it, you realize how much you don't know. And I'm still at that point where I keep finding new words and things that I didn't even know I didn't know until I needed to know it. But part of that journey is trying to learn more about Italy and Italian culture. And I have recently found a place near me in Joliet, Illinois, called the American Italian Cultural Society. I have to learn the name. We went to a few events there, and we went to a spaghetti day, that they make these piles of spaghetti. I mean, I think it's like 2 pounds, and I assume they expect you to eat half and then take the other half home for the next day. And these meatballs that are like almost the size of a baseball. Absolutely amazing. Well, we went on purpose in the middle of the afternoon because it goes from, I think, 11 in the morning till 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And people come for lunch, people come for dinner, but no one's there at 2 or 3. So my wife and I went, and I just started asking, do you speak Italian? Do you speak Italian? And I found some people that did and asked them if they had a few minutes to talk. And they directed me to a few people that weren't working that day, that were members, that love to talk my ear off. They're looking for someone to talk to. Perfect match made in heaven, right? Someone who wants to talk and someone who wants to practice talking me. So got a lot of practice with that. And then they asked, well, why don't you join the club? And I said, well, no one's ever asked me. I don't know how that would work. And one gentleman, his name is Fiori, which means flower in Italian. Fiori says, well, I'm asking, you want to join? And I said, okay, sure. So they gave me some paperwork. We filled it in. We paid our deposit. And hopefully this week they're going to vote me in. I talked to the president, and she seemed to think it was pretty much a done deal. They're looking for new members, and the fact that I actually speak Italian is a big help. You don't have to be Italian to join this club, but you have to kind of embrace the culture, the Italian culture, and the language and things that they do. So I'm going to have some fun with that. We just, the other night, went to a little Christmas dinner and concert where they had some singers in, and it was just very nice, very much fun. The one thing I do worry about, though, apparently this group started in 1988 and was founded by 6 or 7 gentlemen. Now, half of them I know already, or have met 4 or 5 of them out of the 6 or 7. And they started it when they were in their late 40s or early 50s. And so 1988, being about, 30 years ago, those people are now in their 70s and 80s. A lot of the members of the club are older than me, and they look at me as a new, young person that can revitalize the group. So I hope their expectations aren't much higher than my desire to put forth effort, because I love going, I love attending, but I have a busy life and a lot of things that I want to do. So we'll see how we get the balance out of that. The other place we went to in Chicago is called Casa Italia, and it's up closer to Chicago proper, and it's a good drive for us. But when the weather's not bad, we'll go up there more often. But we went to a quiz night, and my wife and I won, and it seemed like some of the people who've been there for years, who are actual genuine Italians, they weren't amused by the fact that we won. So I'm sure they'll get over it. But it was great fun. So that's some things I'm going to do more of in the future, just to try to get myself out of the house, because I have the magical luxury of working from home. My job and this podcast, my office is, I think, 7 or 8 steps and about 10 feet away from the master bedroom. The problem is I work from home, so I don't get out as much as I should in the local community. So I'm trying to find some things to do. Also have found some meetup groups that do Italian speaking. They're a bit of a drive for me as well. And who knows, hopefully the snow won't be too bad and I can go visit them from time to time, even over the winter. Anyway, enough prattling from me. We're going to get into the really good stuff of the show right now. Well, for today's Investing Skeptically topic, I guess I'm going to rant a little bit about the system and how it's not often fair or kind. I guess maybe it's fair, but the system is not kind, and there's a lot of people who are out there to make money for themselves. And so I'm going to talk about a specific case, some people that I've encountered, kind of friends of friends, parents, let's just call them that. And they're in their mid-70s, I guess, and they're struggling with money. So I got involved through a connection of people. And before I dig into this too much, if this sounds like something that you experience, you need to get on top of it and take care of it. And I don't really have the time to help. A lot of people do this. There's probably companies that do this, or you can get a bankruptcy attorney or hire some people to manage debt, kind of thing. Not my forte, but just sometimes I get involved and I try to help out. So we have a situation where I'm going to change some of the numbers in case anyone that knows friends of friends happens to figure out who this is. I'm going to change information so it's not accurate to what really is going on. But let's say they have income of $5,000 a month. And so $5,000 a month, that's about $60,000 a year. Seems pretty reasonable. But in this case, their debt is $120,000. And when I say debt, I don't mean cars and houses. I mean bank loans and credit card loans. If you're in your mid-70s and your gross income is $60,000 and you have a debt of $120,000, and most of it, maybe the cheapest stuff is 7 or 8% loan, but most of it's credit card debt. I mean, like 100 out of the 120,000 is credit card debt. Yes, 100,000 in credit card debt with a gross income of 60. So maybe after taxes you clear 45 or 50. That's tough, man. And if you don't have any other expenses, sure, maybe you can pay it down, and sure, maybe you can get a second job. But in your mid 70s, I'd prefer not to have my first job. Maybe I'll still be doing this because this is barely work and it's good fun. But in this situation, we have a couple that is getting later on in years and has a massive amount of debt. And apparently, up until recently, the way they solved paying the debt was to get more credit cards. And so there's like a dozen credit cards with thousands of dollars on each credit card. And of course, the last credit cards in over the last couple of years are all 20, 25, 26, whatever the legal limit is in their state. And they've gotten to the point where even with taking money out of their retirement portfolio, they can't pay their bills. And they're freaking out. And I got involved and I sat down with them, and really quick came to my mind that we're looking at Chapter 7 bankruptcy here. Not what they wanted to do, but I don't see any way out of it. Maybe they live 10, 15, 20 more years. Who knows? I mean, the statistics are not strong for 20 more years, but it could be many, many years. And you could struggle and scrape by for the entire rest of your life, or you can file bankruptcy. And one of the key points that came up is that they were concerned that it would ruin their credit. And I said, well, you can't even get more credit cards now. No one's lending them any more money. Finally, they got to the point where the lenders won't give them money. But somewhere along the line, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, lenders should have stopped giving them money. They should have stopped issuing them credit cards. They couldn't pay their existing bills, let alone being allowed to borrow more. So the system isn't particularly thoughtful. I mean, each individual company follows its own rules. And apparently they qualified somehow, some way. And so they're paying all these bills. And one example was a credit card where they're paying $250 every month to try to pay it down. And almost 200 of the 250 is interest on the amount that they already owe. So you can figure out if you have $200 of interest in a month and you're only paying down the principal about $50, that will take a lifetime. You just can't do that. So I've had a person on in the past. Maybe I'll have an attorney on again in the future to go over the specifics of bankruptcy. But I'm getting a little firsthand experience with helping because it's complicated. It's difficult. It's not too difficult. But when you're in your mid-70s, I think everything gets more difficult. I should be so lucky to live as long. So we have that to deal with. And that's been an eye-opening experience, to say the least, but hopefully it's the right decision. I don't think there's another decision available to this couple, but, we're going to work through that. One of the other things that came across was they're paying maybe, let's say, $800 or $900 a month in life insurance, not healthcare insurance, because they get Medicare, Medicaid. They've also got supplemental life insurance, which maybe they should pay, maybe they shouldn't. I don't want to mess with that. That's definitely not high on my list. But $800 or $900 of life insurance payments. And all of their kids are grown. And matter of fact, their grandkids are grown. So the life insurance is for each other, I guess. And I started going through item after item. And one of them struck me as just staggeringly amazing that the company is doing this to them. They're paying mortgage insurance and they don't own a house and they haven't owned one for a decade. So mortgage insurance, let's say you buy a $100,000 house and you put $20,000 down, you can buy mortgage insurance. And in case something catastrophically bad happens to you and or your spouse, whatever the rules are of this policy, and it's a 40-page document to read all the rules. And I'm sorry, I just can't read 40 to 100 pages of every one of the insurances they have. It might pay the remaining amount of your home loan, which sounds not unreasonable, but when you do the math on a lot of insurances, and this is the case for a couple things I'm going to talk about here, the mathematics just works out that you're probably never, ever going to get the benefit of what you're paying for. So here's a case where maybe for 15 years while they had a house, they paid for this mortgage insurance. And a decade after they didn't have a house because they have an apartment, they're still paying because they didn't really pay attention for what it was for and just kind of assumed that at any point in time, if anything happened, that was the money they would get. Well, that money, they don't get that money. That money would apply to the mortgage. And might even be limited to the mortgage that's listed on the contract, and you'd have to redo it, but maybe the insurance company doesn't care that much. But if you don't have a mortgage, they're not going to pay out. Well, this insurance company somehow maybe should know that they don't have a house. Clearly, they should know that they don't have a house, but they didn't understand exactly what they had because they bought it a long time ago, and now they're in their mid-70s. So they're paying money every month for mortgage insurance. So we've got to stop that. And then we have a $250,000 life insurance policy. And the payment on that when you're in your 70s is high, or should be high. But they were paying maybe $150 a month for this life insurance. And I said, that can't be. You can't be in your mid-70s and pay $150 a month on $250,000 of life insurance. There's actuarial tables, and you can Google them. You can look them up, life expectancy. So if your life expectancy is 10 years and you have a life insurance policy of $100,000, and of course this is overly simplified, but you get the idea. The life insurance company expects that there's a good chance you're going to die somewhere in the next 10 years. That's your life expectancy. The odds are even. Half the time you're not going to live that long, half the time you're going to live longer. So the insurance company needs to bring in $100,000 from you over the next 10 years. And it might be only 7 or 8 to start with, but it's going to get higher and higher. And they know it's going to get higher and higher, so they're concerned that you're going to bail out later and later. So the life insurance premium might be $10,000 a year for $100,000 of life insurance. Just $100,000 divided by 10 years. It's real simple. This is one of the things that makes really big life insurance policies wonderful if you're in your 20s and 30s, because the odds of you dying are really, really low. The odds that you're going to live long enough and pay on this forever and never leave are really low. The insurance company just pockets that money on the occasional tragic situation where someone dies in their 20s and 30s, and then they have to pay out. But most people live through the 20s and 30s. So it's kind of gambling, betting. The insurance company has the odds. They're the house. They're the casino in this scenario. And if you have a spouse and a couple of kids or a bunch of kids, and you're 25 or 30 or 40, and you want to make sure that they're protected if you're suddenly gone and no income is coming in, that's what life insurance is for. Once your kids are grown, I kind of lean towards they're on their own. It may take a little longer than you'd hoped. You can still be there for them. But you shouldn't be paying generally for insurance. You should be pocketing that money and investing it, because you get to keep that. That grows at a higher rate than an insurance policy. So a second insurance policy that I had, I talked about the mortgage insurance. It was a life insurance for $250,000. And the cash value now is around $25,000, $30,000. And they thought that since they've been paying on this for like 25, 30 years, as long as they kept paying, it would have a cash value of $250,000. And they would just, whoever the beneficiaries were, would get that upon death. Well, it's always built on a whole bunch of assumptions. And one of the problems with life insurance, like health insurance, life insurance is really complicated. And virtually every different policy you buy has different rules. There's a contract that you sign, and you agree to all those rules. And that contract might be 60 or 150 pages. It can be phenomenally long, phenomenally complicated. And there's riders and what ifs. The insurance salesperson doesn't even need to know fully or understand completely what they're selling. And maybe you could argue that they can't. If they have dozens of policies and the companies change the rules every year or two, update the programs, that's a lot to keep up on. And it's not really valuable to the insurance salesperson to know every detail. What's valuable to them is the skills to sell the insurance product to you. That's how they get paid. They don't get paid for being smart. They don't get paid for knowing all the details. They get paid for selling. It's a sales job. Nothing wrong with it inherently, but maybe there is something wrong with it inherently, because people are led to believe, as in this case, that they have something that they don't have. And when we look at this $250,000 policy, and let's say every year that might cost something like $25,000 a year. Well, this couple says, no, it doesn't cost us that. We're only paying in $200 a month. So we're paying $2,400 over a period of a year, which is not a ton of money, but they still get this insurance policy. And I go, no, that can't be right. So we finally get a current statement. And I show them that not only is their cash value, say, $30,000, but it's shrinking by about $7,000 a year. Because the $2,000 that they're paying is not enough. They need to pay $10,000 or $12,000 or $15,000 a year to maintain that insurance policy. They're not paying that. They're paying around $2,400. Where does the rest of the money come? The insurance company pulls it out of your cash value. So now this creates a problem, This is not the first time I've seen this, and it pisses me off every time, and I get very worked up about it because it's not that it's illegal, but it's wrong. So you create a situation, in this case, where a couple is paying this money in, and they can't pay their other bills. They don't have enough money to work on. Even after the bankruptcy, things are going to be tight. And you look at this policy, and you tell them, okay, you can keep paying $2,400, and in about 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how much the insurance goes up, you're going to get to a point where the insurance company can no longer pull money out of the cash value. For 10 or 15 or 20 years, your cash value went up. But as you get older, the insurance premium that you have to pay goes up and goes up dramatically. Now, the amount that you send them every month may not change, but the premium does go up. So if you're not paying enough to cover the premium, the additional money comes out of the cash value or the cash on hand. Again, many companies use different lingo for this, but they're taking your money from you. You're paying the $15,000 bill, $12,000 bill, whether you know it or not. It may come partly from you in your checking account, and it may come partly from the cash value that you've spent a decade or two building, and now it's shrinking. And so in this case, if the person who's insured does not die quickly, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years at the most, the insurance policy will run through all the cash value. And if you want to continue the $250,000 of insurance, you're going to have to pay something like $12,000, $15,000, $18,000, $20,000 a year out of your own pocket. They don't have that kind of money. It's not going to be an option for them. So what will happen is something that they've paid for 10, 20, 30 years will go away. Not necessarily bad, because when you pay for car insurance, you can pay for 5 years, 7 years, and you stop paying, you have no car insurance. The car insurance insured you for 1 year. You pay, you're insured for a year or 6 months, however you pay your car insurance. But you know that. It's really clear. Almost everyone gets that when they pay car insurance. But when you get life insurance, when you get whole, universal, variable universal, a preferred payment plan, yada, 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 whatever names they want to use, it's sold to you, and or you've convinced yourself, or you believe erroneously, and it's all your fault, but I think salespeople have a lot of guilt here. You believe that as long as you keep paying, you're going to have this insurance no matter what. That's how it's sold. Hey, look, maybe you can't afford to save a whole lot of money, but if you give us $200 a month in perpetuity, you're always going to have this $250,000 that goes to your heirs, descendants, spouse, whatever, when you die. You are doing the right thing. You are protecting them. Well, maybe, but then maybe not. So here's a case, $2,400 a year for 20 plus years, which, 2,000 times 2,500 times 10 is 25, 50,000 plus investing. This could have squirreled up to more than $100,000, maybe $150,000 by now. I didn't actually do the math in advance, so I'm just kind of winging this off the top of my head. But you could have real money. And if you keep saving that money for the next 4 or 5 years, your portfolio would grow. If the market goes up, it will grow. And you get a point where you could have more money in investments than the insurance policy would be worth. And of course, then you don't need the insurance policy at all. But if you're struggling to get by while you have 2 incomes, there's a very strong desire to get insurance to make sure the other person is taken care of if and when you die, if you die before them. So it makes sense. It's an easy sell. But in this case, it's a bad thing. And so now they have to decide, do I stop paying now and take out the $30,000? But if you die tomorrow, or you die the day after you get the $30,000 in cash out, your spouse doesn't get $250,000 like you had planned. If you leave the cash value in 4 years, the cash value is zero. You don't have an extra $12,000 to $15,000 a year every year, and it goes up to keep paying into the $250,000 life insurance. Very tough spot to be in, and often, and it's not everybody, and I hope it's not me, but I'm not optimistic about it, knowing my parents. You get to a point where things get harder to do. They get more complicated to do. So as your ability to comprehend mathematics, to do calculations, it gets harder and harder to figure out that you should stop paying. So you keep paying. You keep paying until you can't keep paying. And in this case, that process got short-circuited because I get involved. You can be that person for somebody else. I can't do it for everybody, but if you know someone, if you have parents, or your spouse has parents, or your significant other has parents, your family has friends that have parents, you don't want to totally get in their face and say you're incompetent and can't handle your own money, but check, ask how they're doing. Show a little love. Make yourself available. Make sure that they know that if they're having trouble paying their bills, that you can be a trusted resource for them, that you can be a confidant. You're not going to tell anybody what's going on. And maybe you can see some things that they're spending money on today that they don't need to, and maybe their situation is nowhere near as bad as this. Maybe you can help when it's sooner in the process, not this late. Another thing that this couple had recently done is, having the concern that they're eventually going to go broke, they decided to buy, it wasn't called this by the salesperson, but I'm going to call it this, burial insurance. So for $500 or $600 a year, you get a $5,000 benefit to help pay for a funeral. If you've not paid for a funeral lately, $5,000 is probably not going to cut it. If your state allows for cremation without a casket, maybe you can do it for under $5,000. But if you want a nice casket with a silk lining and brass hinges, and you want to put it in the ground, and they have to put it in this inside of a great big concrete box, they got to pour the concrete and buy the pieces, and you have a service, and you have a room, and you have flowers and all this, it's not going to happen for $5,000. Maybe under 10, but 12 and 15 is not unheard of. So you're buying this life insurance and you're paying $500 a year. Hey, obviously, you can do the math. My average listener is very intelligent, and I'm delighted that you're here. But $500 a year, if you pay for that insurance for 10 years, even if you make no money, even if the money is sitting in an account, a savings account, making no interest, 1% interest, something, $500 a year times 10 years, you have $5,000. You don't need the $5,000 policy. So those frustrate me, that when those are sold, the person selling it is almost always selling it to someone who's a senior citizen. Almost always selling to someone that maybe doesn't fully get the mathematics behind it. I mean, there's going to be 30-year-olds that don't understand the mathematics behind this. A lot of adults don't get proper mathematical understanding. You don't need it in your life beyond making change at the store, and then the machine does it for you. So it doesn't click that paying $500 a year for 10 years is $5,000. And what if you live longer? You pay for 20 years. Now you could have $10,000, but the policy caps out at $5,000. That's the point of the insurance. They want to get more money from you than they give to you. That's how it freaking works. When you look at ginormous buildings in big cities that have insurance company names on the top, you paid for that. Well, at least somebody paid for that. It's like casinos. Casinos aren't built on the backs of winners. They control the game. They calculate the odds. They come out ahead. So the other thing that this couple bought is accidental death insurance. Again, a supplemental insurance. And without reading the full policies of each one that they have, there's going to be specific criteria that have to be triggered for the insurance to actually pay out. They thought that it was just going to get paid out. So again, they're out more money every month, and you get a $5,000 or $10,000 accidental death insurance. If you die from cancer, not accidental. That's a medical death. If you die from old age, not an accident. And even if you do die from an accident, somewhere in the contract, there's details about what is and is not an accident. And they may not be as generous as you think they should be. And you're not going to know because you're going to be dead. And the people you're trying to leave the money to aren't going to know what the rules are until they contact the insurance company. Of course, there's a lot of paperwork and forms to fill out. The insurance company may deny it for one reason or another. Reasons you don't find acceptable, but they think it's okay because it's in the contract. And good luck for you if you're the person that wanted or needed $5,000 or $10,000, hiring an attorney and going and suing an insurance company. Good luck with that. Another reason, yes, I have heartburn against a lot of insurances. Another thing is that the other person has to know there's life insurance to even collect it. I've run into people that have had this occasion many times, and the insurance companies aren't falling over themselves to pay out. And then you can get another situation, and this happened to my family personally when my dad passed away about 7 years ago. He did have a life insurance policy. We did know about it. We did collect on it. But they sent a document to my mom, again, at the time in her mid-70s, where they sent this form, and there's 4 or 5 different options that you can do. The first option is explained all on the first page. You can check the box at the top of the page. It's all in a large font. You can read it, and then you can sign at the bottom of the page. 2, 3, and 4 are in a very small font on the next page, and it looks like it's just kind of like instructions or supplemental notes. And you're not going to read that shit. You're just going to go, oh, everything I need to do is on the first page. Well, she had the option of getting, I don't remember the amount specifically, so I'll just make a number up, $100,000. Life insurance he pays out, they're going to send her $100,000. Now, it probably worked out that my parents had paid more into this insurance policy than the $100,000 they got out, but for now, she gets $100,000. So it seems like a windfall. You get $100,000, but the first option, they're going to put it in a checking account for you. They're going to hold it for you, and they're going to help you keep making money. So instead of going to your regular bank and making nothing in your checking account, this is a checking account that's going to pay 2%. And my mom looked at that and was like, that's fantastic. And she passed away a couple years ago, but for the last 7 or 8 years, interest rates have been really low. Checking accounts pay nothing. So here's a chance to make 2% on $100,000. So she's thinking, hey, that's free money to me. Why don't I just pick that? It's the only one she read because the way the form is designed, it's in the large font. Everything else is in the small font. The signature's on the bottom of the first page. She'd already filled it out and checked the box. And they're going to put $100,000 in an account for her and pay her 2% interest. So she's going to make $2,000 a year. She's looking at that and going, that's big money, $2,000 a year. However, if you want to take the money out, well, they call it a checking account, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Again, there's always little details. She could only write 1 check a month, and the largest size the check could be is $500. So if she remembered to, if she needed to, if she wanted to, she could write a $500 check every month, and every year she could take out $6,000. That's the only money she can have access to. She's not permitted to take out the rest of the money. Or if she does, there's a penalty. And I'm telling you, the penalty is going to be more than the 2%. You're going to lose the 2% and pay something else. So it could take her 10, 12, 15 years to get all this money out. And the reason the insurance company does that is while they're paying you 2%, they go and invest that money somewhere else and make way more than 2%. They don't have the short-term risk of you taking it out because you can't. And if you do, there's a penalty. So they still don't lose. And they have lots and lots of people doing this over long periods of time so they can invest in the long run and hopefully make 6, 8, 10% or more on your money. So let's say they make 8. They make 8 and they pay you 2. They clear 6. They clear 6% a year on money that's not even theirs. That's magic. So yes, I have serious heartburn issues with all kinds of insurance. This has gone way longer than I expected, but I am strongly opposed to life insurance if you don't need it. If your kids are grown adults, maybe you don't need it. Likely you don't need it. When you get older and your kids have kids, you probably don't need it at all. You shouldn't be paying for it. Cash it out. Take the money while you can. Don't buy mortgage insurance. That in and of itself is crap. Accidental death insurance, you probably don't need that. Credit card insurance, you don't need that. I've also seen people have come to me that have cancer insurance. Again, where you think, well, if I get cancer, my spouse gets this extra $20,000. Well, it's only $20,000 if it's a specific rare type of cancer. The most common types of cancer, like prostate, breast cancer, thyroid cancer, only pay out $2,000 or $3,000. And you're paying $500 a year for this. And you've paid it for 10, 15, 20 years. And of course, there's the whole spilt milk philosophy. Well, if I've been paying for 20 years, why stop now? Because then I won't get anything for all the money I put in. You're probably not going to get anything for the money you put in anyway. So some rants about age and bankruptcy and insurance, and we'll take a quick break and get to our interview.
there was one performance this year that stunned me. It sank its hooks in my heart. Not because it was good. There was nothing good about it. But it was effective and it did its job. It made its intended audience laugh and show their teeth. It was that moment when the person asking to sit in the most respected seat in our country imitated a disabled reporter, someone he outranked in privilege, power, and the capacity to fight back. It kind of broke my heart when I saw it, and I still can't get it out of my head because it wasn't in a movie. It was real life. And this instinct to humiliate, when it's modeled by someone in the public platform, by someone powerful, it filters down into everybody's life because it kind of gives permission for other people to do the same thing. Disrespect invites disrespect. Violence incites violence. When the powerful use their position to bully others, we all lose. Okay, go up with that thing. Okay, this brings me to the press. We need the principled press to hold power to account, to call them on the carpet for every outrage.
It looks like we may have accidentally stumbled across an idea for a new show segment. I'm not quite sure what we'll call it yet, but for now, we're going to talk about Sugar Grove Church in Goshen, Indiana. They happen to be a facility that held elections recently for 2018, and very convenient for the members of this mega church. They left out documents for anyone to see, including a person who was going there to vote who happened to pick up a free copy of their minutes. So we're going to have some fun talking about the minutes from Sugar Grove Church in Goshen, Indiana. And the first thing I want to point out is that their budget is almost $2 million. And we're going to go through some of these lines, and you're going to love this. The first thing is that compensation and fringe, that's their word, fringe benefits, I'm assuming, is almost $1 million. So right off the top, almost one half of all the money they bring in goes into wages. And I looked at this church. Hang on a second here. There is a lead pastor, a worship pastor, a discipline pastor, a care pastor, children and family pastor, and student pastor. And I'm guessing 5 of these 6 people don't make more than $50,000 a year. That's just my guess. They're in it for the love of their job. And even if all 6 of them got paid equally, which we know is not even a theoretical possibility, they have $900,000, almost $1 million to split, $150,000, $180,000 a piece. And if we assume some reasonable big difference for the lead pastor, this guy could be making $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000 a year. So that's interesting. Now, there might be some church staff that I'm leaving out, so maybe this guy only makes $400,000 or $500,000, but still not a bad gig to be in charge of a church. The next line is church administration, and it's not broken down what that means. I guess that means running the office. I don't know if that means paper, copiers, toner, staples, things like that. I don't know if it includes any wages. I'm guessing 50% of the budget, that's all included in that first line. And then we have ministries. And ministries are different parts and segments of the church, and these each individually are pretty small, but they have discipleship ministry, children's ministry, care ministry, the smallest line on the entire budget, by the way, youth fellowship, worship ministries, and so all of these things are between $20,000 and $40,000, except for the care ministry at about $10,000. Utilities are $45,000 a year, almost $4,000 a month for lighting, heating, and air conditioning for a building that's used in full. I mean, a couple of times on the weekend for services and lots of small groups meeting during the week. But that's an awful lot of money to heat and air condition a building. Bus summary is what it's called, is $19,500. Oh, this is a nice one. Building and grounds. So I'm assuming that's for building costs, maintenance costs, repairing the boiler, fixing the roof, all that stuff. That's $251,000 a year. Insurance, $47,000 a year. And we get down to the bottom of this list. Adult ministries, $68,000. I don't know why that wasn't up with all the other ministries, but there you have it. And then we have 3 different missions. We have individual missions. I don't know. I'm assuming they're paying someone to go to Haiti or South Africa or some other part of the world to bring the love of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Mission organizations, $32,000, and missions annual projects, $57,000. Then that's it. That's all the detail that they have here. And the question is, what is this doing good for the community? Well, the individual ministries, you could argue it's good for the community. I mean, first off, the half that goes to wages is not helping anyone else other than the employed people. You have the building and the utilities. No property tax, by the way, because they don't pay property tax. The insurance and the utilities, that is taking up almost 75% of the budget. And then the rest is ministries. And then maybe the mission work is good. The money that goes to other mission organizations, of course, they have their own staffing needs and issues. So that I'm not going to count that. Mission individuals, I'm assuming that's paying people to go on mission trips around the world. That doesn't really count. Annual projects, I don't know what that is. So what we're left here with is virtually nothing going into the local community. Let's assume annual projects is stuff they're doing around town. That's $60,000. So $60,000 out of $2 million. Let's see, $2 million, 10% would be $200,000. And so this is less than a third of that. So 2.8%, something like that, 2.8%, 3% of the money is going to help the community. So on a charitable organization kind of scale, very, very little of this money is actually going to help anyone other than the lead pastor, the other pastors, the other employees, members of the organization, and then next to nothing is left over for any other benefit to the community. I also found on their website, they have this thing called the Beyond Project, and they raised or have been in the process of raising $2.8 million for an expansion to their church. Beautiful, beautiful expansion. Just this great big chunk of building added on to the side here for $2.8 million so they can have even more people at a service. And also in this report, of course, there's fun stuff like voting. Let's see, I'm scrolling through here trying to do this in real time, so forgive me for being kind of scattered here. They had this thing, they're going to change a bit of, here it is, a bit of the church constitution. Yeah, they have a constitution, and you get to vote. And maybe that's why this document and all the wackiness in it was out. But here is the new proposal for Article 4, Section 1, Membership. Part A, Qualifications. Quote, any person who gives evidence of having been born again, who has been baptized by immersion following salvation, who agrees with the doctrinal statement of the church, and who has met with a team of elders and has been approved by the Board of Elders will be presented to the congregation by the Board of Elders at a regular Sunday morning service and will be received by acclamation upon the congregation standing and reading aloud the church covenant. In the event that a candidate for membership was baptized by water after salvation, by a mode other than immersion, the candidate shall be encouraged, but not required, to be baptized by immersion in order to become a member of Sugar Grove. End quote. So they changed the qualifications, or at least they're trying to. I don't know how this vote turned out. I'm assuming it passed. It's one of those churchy things. I'm assuming it passed. And they've got places here you can vote on new deacons. That's nice. New elders. And it's got some bio stuff on these people and what all the wonderful things that they've done. And that's all boring as hell. So we're going to skip that. Elder positions. This is good. This is good. Average Sunday attendance. So, and it breaks out children and electives and communities. I don't know what that is, but so they're broken out. So kids aren't counted, but the general attendance average year to date is 1,183 people. So on an average Sunday, they have 1,200 people, roughly 1,183 people show up. So the church is at least that many members. My experience on a church school board with the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church in Danville, Illinois, a long story for another time, is that the vast majority of people don't make every single week. Of course, there's the regulars that come every week, and then you've got the people that come for Easter and Christmas. So they don't come very often, and some of those people give some money, but not as much as the people that show up every time. But if they get 1,200 people, roughly, every week, the question is, what is the real number of their membership? How many people would claim to be members of this church? My experience in the past is that somewhere between 20% and 33% of the people show up on an average Sunday. That's right. 1/5 to 1/3 of the people show up. So you have to go several different weeks to get to see most of the people. And of course, Easter and Christmas for everybody else. Giving them the benefit of the doubt that a really high percentage, from my experience, show up. That means about 40% of the people show up every single Sunday. That would mean their membership is close to 3,000. The actual calculation is 2,957 and a half people. So we're gonna call it 3,000 people are members of this church. If their annual budget is, and I know what it is around $2 million, and they have approximately 3,000 members, we can easily calculate how much money is given per member. So I thought that'd be a nice thing to do. So I took $2 million and divided it by 3,000 people, and the average amount donated per person, per member of this church, not counting the kids, per member of this church, you're going to love this, is $666.66. Well, 67 cents, because I eventually got around. But aside from the fact that that is so funny, I can't hardly take it, the average member gives $666.67. But you might ask yourself, a very reasonable question, by the way, is what is the average income in Goshen? It's about $40,000 per household, but I did the math earlier on per person basis, so I gotta be fair. Per person, the average income is $18,800. Just a FYI, it's not real expensive to live in Goshen, Indiana. You can get a nice house, I'm sure, for $100,000. And you can go shopping at the Piggly Wiggly for not much money at all. It's a great place to retire if you don't have much money and you don't mind living in Goshen, Indiana. So the average person contributes $666. The average person makes $18,800. That means the average person gives about 3.5% of their income. Well, it's supposed to be 10% here, people. 3.5% of their income, which hysterically, again, when I was involved with the church board, I had some of these numbers, and I knew that church, it was around 3% also. So this church is doing a little bit better at 3.5%. So this idea that everybody's giving 10%, complete fucking fantasy. People don't give 10% to churches. Here's a case they give 3.5% to churches. And if I look back at the money that maybe was going to help the local community, what did we say that was? That was $60,000. Let's see here. Equals 60,000 divided by 2 million. we're going to come up with something like 0.3%. So the average person gives 3.5% of their income, and not 10% of that goes to helping people out in the community. 300ths. Yeah, about 3% of the 3.5%. So about 0.1% of your income ends up helping the local community, something like that. So it's really bad numbers. They're not doing a whole lot of good in the community. The money, mostly, half of it goes to staffing, and the bulk of that goes to the senior pastor. That's my assumption. If I was him, I'd want to collect the money. And then you have all these people showing up and having a nice time spending their own money. So it's kind of a social club. Why should they get 501c3 status? I mean, they don't even get 501c3. They're a 501c3, but they get to claim that they are by just saying they're a religion, and they don't have to do the paperwork that any other charity does. So almost no money goes to do any benefit in the community. And for this service or lack thereof, they get to not pay property taxes. They don't pay income tax. They don't pay taxes on the things that they buy. They're tax exempt for their supplies. And they probably call, and I got my radio quotes, call their employees so they don't pay FICA, Social Security, unemployment insurance, and a whole lot of other things that keep us as a civil society. So that's just some fun things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out a call to all the listeners. If for some reason you have to go into a church, I don't want you to go in if you don't already have to, because I could not ask that of my listeners. That would be inappropriate. But if you happen to be in a church for an election, for a vote, for someone's wedding, or a friend drags you there screaming and kicking, and you're compelled for whatever reason to go to a church, look around on the tables in the lobby and waiting area. Look for handouts. Look for information, maybe the budget, maybe some things that they're going to vote on. And we'll see if we can turn this into a game. If I get nothing else, fine. It's just a one-off, and we had some little fun with this one mega church. But if other people can find things, maybe we can start to build a little shared resource and information about church budgets and how much really goes to helping out people in need in the area. And of course, in this cases of this church, anything that can be possibly theoretically considered going to the local community is part of the mission work, which means even if they're handing out free food, you're probably going to have to sit and suffer through a sermon and jump through hoops to get it. It's not like they're really there to help you. They're there to convert you. Oh, and incidentally, we're going to give you some food. So to the best of my knowledge, if someone knows more about this church and they're doing something really special that I'm not aware of, let me know. I went through their website. I couldn't find it. But let me know. And we're going to wrap up our little fun section here on church money. All right, everybody. Welcome back. With me now, I have Sally Hunt, and she has been causing trouble in St. Louis, Missouri. Isn't that right, Sally?
Oh, yes. Always.
Well, I don't want to spoil yet the story, so don't reveal. Don't do the big reveal. We're going to tease the listeners. But you, along with the help of the ACLU, and correct me if I get any of this wrong, you have sued a local 2-bit town outside of St. Louis. Is that right?
Yes. Wentzville, Missouri.
Wentzville, Missouri. So whence forth comes this problem? I know some time ago you went to their meetings to discuss some concerns you had. And what was your problem? What was your concern with this, what the city was doing?
Yeah, so the city of Wentzville in their city hall has a very large display that says, "In God We Trust." And they put that up there when they built their new city hall about a year ago. And so I had gone to just speak against the display.
Yeah.
And in support of the separation of church and state. And do you want me to go ahead and say what happened?
No. Well, I mean, we're going to go through this step by step.
Okay.
But
I would say I don't want to get ahead of myself.
yeah. I know you went to talk and they have this big display, but that's the motto of the United States, or one of them. But anyway, you took advantage of a process that they have that anyone can speak for 5 minutes. Do I understand that correctly?
Correct. That is absolutely correct. Yeah, anyone. You do not have to live in Wentzville. You just have to. You're supposed to sign up to speak in advance. But yeah, absolutely anyone can speak, and you're supposed to get 5 minutes.
So you followed the process and procedure. You got your 5 minutes. Well, you were allowed to start your 5 minutes, but you weren't allowed to finish. Why is that?
Yeah, because the mayor didn't like what I was saying, that I was speaking against the In God We Trust display and for equal representation of all people regardless of religious beliefs or non-belief. And he cut me off early because he disliked what I was saying.
Sure. You got the bulk of the time, and if he had just let you go another half a minute, you would have had your 5 minutes say, and then you'd have to sit down because you're done, right?
Right.
But he couldn't do that. He had to stop you. And there's video of this. Is that because the minutes or the meeting is public and it's filmed, or did you have a crew there, or how'd that work out?
Right. No, that was from them because they record all of their meetings, and they have them. The video is always on the internet.
So it's nice to have evidence, right? So he cut you a little short and insisted you sit down. And did you at that point say, I haven't gotten my 5 minutes?
Well, I didn't know that. That's the thing. They did not have a timer.
Oh.
And they do now. But at that, I just trusted that it was true that my 5 minutes were up.
Now, when they said you're done, however they said it, and they said, sit down, did you scream at them? Did you throw things? Did you do anything crazy? You just went and sat down?
Definitely not anything crazy at all. And so I was about to go sit down, but then, so he said, your 5 minutes is up. And then he started talking to me, responding to me, which is kind of against protocol because typically they don't actually respond right away to the speakers.
Yeah.
In these meetings at all. And I had said when I spoke, I had discussed the fact that I had spoken with people who live in Wentzville, residents of Wentzville, who are opposed to that display as well, just like I was. And but that they were afraid to speak up publicly for fear of retaliation, for fear of hostility and resentment against them in Wentzville and from the government. And that's definitely true. There are many people in Wentzville that had contacted me who agreed with me and that were opposed to this In God We Trust display. But yeah, they just didn't want to speak publicly, which is, and I can certainly understand that. Not most people, do have that fear, which makes perfect sense because there is so much discrimination against, atheists for sure, but just really even just anyone who questions the status quo of religion, Christianity being promoted by government. But anyway, so I had just said, that I have spoken with numerous people in Wentzville who are opposed to this display, who are afraid to come forward. So when the mayor cut me off early, and then he responded to me at that point and he said, I just want it to be known that what you said is hearsay about people in Wentzville being opposed to this display. It's just hearsay because they're not here tonight, and people in Wentzville are never afraid to let their opinions be known. So they would have been here if that were true. So then I responded to him and I said, are you accusing me of lying? And then he responded, he said, no, I'm just saying that, they're not here tonight. And I said, well, I told you why they're not here, because they're afraid of backlash against them. And then that's when he said, okay, I'm going to have you removed by cops. I'm going to have you taken out of this meeting at that point.
And this is still video of this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the whole thing.
So he waves his magic arm or snaps his fingers, and the police come over and say, "I'm sorry, but you have to leave."
Yeah, well, and actually it was interesting because it wasn't even that fast. So he said, I'm going to have you taken out of this meeting or something like that. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And I was done. I had been about to go sit down at that point anyway. And then I walk to my seat, and I was done speaking at that point, and I sit down, and I had already sat down. And then he sends these two cops over to me, and there's video of me where I am already sitting down, and then they tell me I have to leave. And that's what's so silly about it and so absurd. Like I was already done anyway at that point. So what's the point in kicking me out? I was already, I never was causing a disturbance or anything like that. But yeah, so they took me out, and I asked him. I said, "Why are you having me removed?" And he didn't even really have an answer. And then he said, "You're from Maryland Heights," and that's the suburb, the St. Louis County where I live is Maryland Heights. And he says, "You're from Maryland Heights," as if that's a reason to have me removed. He just had nothing to say.
Yeah. Because to the best of your knowledge, there's no rule that you have to live in the city to speak to the city. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's definitely no rule.
So anyone can show up. You registered. You did everything you're supposed to do. They cut you a little short, which you didn't know at the time. And then he responds instead of just moving on and makes a scene out of it. You respond back to him. You go sit down, and he still has the cops come and take you outside.
Yes.
And at that point, did you go outside, or did you throw yourself down and pound like a baby, or what?
Yeah, I mean, they pulled me out by the arm and just took me outside and wouldn't let me go back in. And and it's all on video. And I mean, like, you can go on, anyone who wants to see it can go on YouTube, and if you search, Sally Hunt Wentzville, you can see it. And I have it under my account as well, Sally Hunt on YouTube. But yeah, the whole thing, no, I was definitely not difficult at all. But I was just asking these police officers, why did I get removed? Why can't I just stay in this meeting? And the whole thing was just so absurd. It didn't make any sense. And it was, just simply because I spoke against this "In God We Trust" display.
Well, and of course, one of your claims was that people were concerned that they might be singled out and their lives might be difficult. And to show that you're wrong, the mayor has the police grab and drag you out of the meeting. Right? Mm-hmm. That's so to show that there's no concern for local citizens, he has you dragged out.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're dragged out and you can't go back in. And what happens after that?
So then after that, so then that made the news, that he had done that. And so it got a lot of local attention, and then it and it was interesting. It just kept blowing up and getting attention. And then there was another big meeting after that. 2 weeks later, tons of people showed up in support of the motto "In God We Trust," and that was a whole other big thing. Like, all of these people were there with signs that said, "We support In God We Trust," and all of these people got up and spoke in support of the motto, and were, overtly citing the Bible and citing Christianity as their reason for why they support this motto and this display. But so anyway, that was a whole other interesting thing, that next meeting. But regarding the one where I was taken out, the ACLU found out about it, and they contacted me, and they said that they wanted to file a lawsuit on my behalf against the city of Wentzville, because they felt strongly that the city of Wentzville had violated my First Amendment rights by retaliating against me because of my speech, because of my viewpoint, my speech.
I'm guessing that they didn't twist your arm too hard on that case?
Right. No.
Okay, because what I know from you, you're like, oh, sweet, I should have thought of calling you, right?
Yes, exactly. I was very, very happy to hear from them.
I can imagine. So they do their legal magic thing. And now, did other groups help, or is this kind of just an ACLU thing?
Just the ACLU.
Okay. And they filed papers, and did this go to court somewhere, or did it settle out? What happens next?
We settled.
Okay.
And I was advised that was the best way to go. And it's unfortunate that we didn't go to court. I wish we could have. We were assigned to Judge Stephen Limbaugh, who is cousins with Rush Limbaugh.
Oh, nice.
And has a very similar outlook. And so most likely, had we gone to court, it would not have gone the way we would have wanted it to. But yeah, so we did go ahead and settle. So
now what happened in the settlement? Did they just say that you have to pay them for disrupting the meeting, or did they have to do something for you?
Yeah, so they paid the ACLU legal fees, which was like over $2,000, like $2,700 or something like that. And they agreed to update their city code to have a provision where they will specifically say at their meetings that they are inclusive of all religious beliefs and non-belief, something along those lines. I can't remember the exact statement, but basically that's the gist of it. So that was part of it. And then also they agreed that they would retrain their police officers to understand citizens' rights. So essentially they're able to, disagree with the mayor, if the mayor orders them to do something, but they know that it is a violation of a person's rights, constitutional rights, that they do not have to follow the mayor's orders. So I thought that was I thought that was pretty helpful as well, that they were going to do that.
Yeah. I happened to be looking at the Friendly Atheist blog that talks about this story and its recent outcome. And it says here that the city updated its city code. So, I mean, this is the city actual rules, which is a significant thing. And it says the right to disagree with public officials without fear of intimidation or retribution is one of the cornerstones of a healthy democracy. So they actually put it in the code that, yes, you are allowed to disagree with public officials. So that's kind of nice.
Yes.
And how much money did you make on this whole deal?
$500.
Woo! Well, okay.
I know. I'm rolling in the dough.
That's right. You go to every little small town in Missouri, you can make a living out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, is the "In God We Trust" sign still there?
Unfortunately, it is. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It would have been ideal to get that thing taken off, but that's not what this case was about, because that would have to be a completely separate type of case, which, as you know, unfortunately, somehow, unconstitutionally, is currently our national motto. So really, until it goes to the Supreme Court, which it's a little bit concerning, the Supreme Court right now, but until that happens, that is really not...
Okay.
That's kind of a separate issue.
And you said they added a clock so they know exactly when 5 minutes is up for everybody?
Correct.
So that's nice. And can you still address the council if you're not in that city?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. So that, it's not a huge, giant victory, but it's a win because you had lost your ability to speak and attend a meeting that was open to the public. You got kicked out. And so they got a little slap on the wrist and a small fine that the fine people of Wentzville paid for. And there's no real penalty to the mayor here, is there?
Yeah, no. I mean, I wish. There should be. I mean, that's what. Yeah, it's frustrating because it would be ideal if there were more of a penalty. And of course, it's not like it's his money that pays the ACLU their legal fees. I mean, that's from the city. And so, yeah, definitely it's not as though I think this is, the most enormous win in the world that, it's an unfortunate situation that the power structure is still this Christian supremacist, Christian theocratic power structure. Definitely this status quo remains. We still do have that enormous "In God We Trust" discriminatory display in the government, making it clear that they do have preferential treatment for religious believers compared with everyone else. And that is an unfortunate reality of this country right now. But I do feel good about the fact that I made it known on the record publicly that they are absolutely endorsing discrimination. And the way I see it, that's a win that I at least was able to let them know, and it ended up getting a lot more attention than I ever planned because the mayor just couldn't help himself and hated me so much that he just had to overreach and get me kicked out by the cops. But I mean, I feel like what's the alternative? Just to sit and be silent and say absolutely nothing. So I at least did something. Yeah. I said something.
Have you been back to Wentzville since then?
I have numerous times. I have gone and I have spoken against this display numerous times, and my children have as well, actually. They spoke on behalf of all of the kids in Wentzville who don't believe in a God. So I thought that was cool.
That is very cool. Now,
yeah.
Were you brought up religious, or were your parents secular and you grew up non-believing all the way from the beginning?
Yeah, no, I grew up in a secular household. I do feel fortunate in that way. I was never indoctrinated into any religion. My family, my parents are of a Jewish background, but I was not raised with any religion at all. So I've really always identified as an atheist. I've always been an atheist. And so I think that why I am so angry about this endorsement of religion by our government is that it's so ridiculous, and just it makes me so angry that this is still going on today. Here I am, well into my adulthood, and it's the same stuff that used to anger me when I was a kid. I remember being a kid and being very aware of this sentiment that it is considered superior to believe in a God, like from our government and in public schools when we would say the Pledge of Allegiance and one nation under God. And I've always known.
Yes, somehow that stuff just kind of becomes the default way of doing things, and it drives me nuts too. So great on standing up and fighting it. And can you mention where we can learn more about you? Is it a website that we can go to?
Yeah, so I use my Facebook page a lot. I have, it's called The Passionate Atheist Sally Hunt. And you can go to facebook.com/passionateatheist. And I plan on starting a blog hopefully soon, but I'm mainly on that page right now. And I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/SallyHuntAtheist. And you can find me on Instagram @SallyBHunt, and same on Twitter @SallyBHunt.
Now, if anyone is listening to the show and is involved with a local or even a national conference, would you be willing and able to go give a talk about this?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So listeners, of course, you just heard all the contact information. If you didn't make notes, just go back 30 seconds to a minute and find all that out and contact Sally and have her talk. I've seen you. I thought I saw you give a talk. You did a nice job. So have Sally come to your conference. And Sally, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and visit and talk with us on the Phil Ferguson Show.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate it.
Jesus had a tough life, boy. I read about that guy. Jesus is the only guy that ever came back from the dead that didn't scare the fuck out of everybody, man. He's the only guy that ever crawled out of a grave where people didn't go, oh, I just saw some fucker crawl out of this grave. Jesus comes back. He doesn't get any pressure. No static. Nobody's upset. He climbs out. He's walking around. Nobody's upset. They can eat with him and everything. You know? It's like, isn't that guy dead? Yeah, but he's real stubborn, man. He won't accept it. Pass the butter. What are they staring at? Yeah, I read it, folks. I read that book. He's on the cross. 30, 40 Christians standing around going, it's a shame that he has to die. And Jesus is going, well, maybe I wouldn't have to. Somebody get a ladder and a pair of pliers. I don't know if Jesus has actually spoken in an audible voice to anybody in about 2,000 years, folks. I think his last words may have been, oh, not the other one. Oh, you jerk. No. It may have been his last words. I'm not sure. Yeah, people say, you think Jesus is coming back? Sure. What's it been, 2,000 years? Boy, I sure don't want to dampen anybody's optimism here. It's only 2,000 fucking years. Yeah, he's coming back. He's going to do game shows. We're going to go, Jesus, this is your life. Remember this noise? All right, don't tell me. Give me a second. He's up in heaven right now. They're going, why don't you go back down to earth? Be a symbol of peace and love to the world. Help. And he's going, yeah, sure. Help, huh? Yeah, I'd like to help. Tell him I'll be there as soon as I can play the piano again. Thanks a lot. I mean, the only savior that can use his hand is a fucking whistle.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
Once again, it's that time to wrap up the show, and I do have a couple of reviews to go over, so I'm going to get to them real quick here. On iTunes, from Hiking Skeptically, a 5-star review. Thank you very much. I was first introduced to Phil via Opening Arguments, episode OA63, where he talked about 529 college savings accounts. After that, the cleverly titled Phil Ferguson Show became my go-to podcast, the only one that I constantly listen to every episode. I love the balance of investing skeptically segments with the interviews of atheist authors and other interesting characters. Highly recommended. End quote. Thank you, Hiking Skeptically. I very, very much appreciate that. And of course, if you like the show and you want to thank me in some way and maybe don't have any money, or you notice that I don't have a Patreon account, you can go give me a review. It helps the show reach more people. It helps it show up in recommendations from iTunes and Stitcher and Spreaker and other places like that. So it helps me, and maybe you can help someone else learn about investing or how to think skeptically about other topics. Speaking of Stitcher, a new review on Stitcher. I don't get too many there, but there's a new one, so thank you very much. It comes from Brian Considine. I don't know how to say it, so Brian, my apologies. And here is the review. Again, 5 stars. Thank you. A quirky combination about 1/3 or so about finance/investing from the point of view of the regular guy trying to save and invest properly, from investments, kids, college, and so on. And 2/3 an interview segment about atheism. If you're not atheist, don't worry. Phil is not dogmatic, and you can enjoy the second segment as presenting the best of different point of view. If you're an atheist, Phil is an excellent example of level-headed and sensible discussion. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate those kind words, even if some of them aren't always true. Sometimes I can be a little dogmatic, and sometimes I wonder if I should be more so on the show. So let me know what you're thinking. You can always email me, Phil, at polarisfinancialplanning.com. If you have questions about your investments, you may also contact me, Phil, at polarisfinancialplanning.com. Just as a brief reminder, because the business has grown so much and I'm getting pretty close to being full, I only take on new clients that have at least $500,000 of assets under management. So if you don't meet that, you won't be able to hire me, but we can still talk. So email me. I'll try to fit you into the schedule. If I don't respond to an email that you send me for whatever reason, and you think it needed a response, but it wasn't just a show topic suggestion, and I don't respond to you, remind me. Let me know. I'm busy. Also keep in mind, we're coming up to the holiday. Well, I guess we're in the holiday season, but Christmas time and events and family and things can make it even more complicated. So my apologies if I don't answer right away. But once again, thank you for listening to the show. And I hope to see you out there at a conference sometime soon in person. Until then, ciao.
Let's kick it. All right, stop. Open your Bible and listen. Pastor Frank is about to start preaching. The Holy Spirit grabs a hold of me tightly, pouring blessings over me daily and nightly. He will never stop. Oh, I know. Seek him always and you'll grow. At the foot of the cross, I take off my sandals, giving him my burdens and the rest he can handle. Pray, crush the enemy, he's doomed, sending him straight to the emergency room. Godly, crucified so we can be free. He gave us life and we are his prodigy. Love him, believe him, you better pick a way. There's two paths to choose and God don't play. If there was a problem, yo, he'll solve it. Check out the Bible, what's the worship revolving. Jesus Christ, baby. Jesus Christ, baby. Wait, girl, I don't think they hear you out there. I said Jesus Christ, baby. Now that the church is jumping, the Bible open to John, it's thumping. It's straight to the point, no Satan. And then I'm skating. If you love God, you gotta stay humble. He goes crazy and the walls will crumble on a high cloud. He's watching us closely. We're no Catholics, but grab your rosary, heathens. You gotta listen close, it's a hot problem. You gotta diagnose. It's time for on standby, ready for an open fire. You gotta look up, cause he's gonna fight. Be ready. He's coming any second. Repent for your sins and you'll go to heaven. We were dead, yo, so we decided on CCV. Coverage Apple Avenue Christians. So read your Bible discreetly. We're rich in Christ, don't need Lamborghinis. Jealous, Satan's almost out of time. Jesus is the branch and we are the vine. Ready for God to take us all. Heathens, listen up, it's almost curtain call. Trumpets will ring out like a bell. Listen, let's go to heaven, not hell. Falling on my knees real fast. Not sure what day will be my last. Bumper to bumper, Calvary's path. I'm trying to get a seat that's not in the back. Our sins have been clean, you know what I mean. He died for us, perfect for the ones ever seen. If there was a problem, yo, he'll solve it. Now give your life to him and God will revolve it. Jesus Christ, baby. Jesus Christ, baby. Jesus Christ, baby. Jesus Christ, baby. My soul for him. Jesus Christ, baby. My soul is yours. Jesus Christ, baby. Take it all. Jesus Christ, baby. My soul. Drops mic.